The day my sister-in-law called about a rejected lamb, I didn't hesitate. "I'll take him," I said, even though I'd never raised a sheep before. Richard was this tiny, wobbly thing, barely a few days old, and his mom had pushed him away. My heart sank seeing him so alone, so I brought him home, determined to give him a chance. I started bottle feeding him, watching his big eyes blink up at me as he gulped down the milk. But I knew lambs need more than just food. They need a family. So I got 2 other sheep to keep him company, hoping they'd hit it off. Richard, though, had other plans. He didn't care about the other sheep. Instead, he latched onto Chumley, our livestock guardian dog, like they were long-lost buddies. I'm Lacey, by the way, and this is the story of how Richard and Chumley became inseparable. It was the craziest thing. Everywhere Chumley went, Richard was right there, trotting along like a shadow. Chumley's this big, fluffy dog trained to protect the livestock, but he's got this gentle side that just melted for Richard. I'd catch them lying together in the grass, Richard nuzzling up to Chumley, and Chumley just soaking it in, his tail wagging lazily. But it wasn't all cuddles and sunshine. Richard was curious, always poking his nose where it didn't belong, and that got him into trouble sometimes. One day, I looked out my window and saw a chicken pestering Chumley, trying to peck at him while he was resting. Richard wasn't having it. This little lamb, barely taller than the grass, started butting the chicken away with his head like, "Back off, my friend, I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen a lamb act so protective. But that's Richard for you, small but fierce when it came to Chumley." Chumley, though, was the real protector. He's got this instinct to guard all the livestock, goats, sheep, you name it. But with Richard, it was different. They had a bond, something special. I'd see them snuggled up together multiple times a day, Richard initiating it, flopping down next to Chumley like it was the most natural thing in the world. Chumley never minded. He'd just shift to make room, like he knew Richard needed him. But not everyone got the memo about their friendship. We have another guardian dog, Chloe, who's great but can be a bit rough. One time, I caught her chasing Richard, tugging at his wool like it was a game. I was about to step in, but Chumley beat me to it. He got between them, gave Chloe this stern look, and let out a low growl like, "Nope, we don't mess with Richard around here." Chloe backed off, and I just stood there, amazed. Chumley had drawn a line in the sand for his little buddy. Living up here in the mountains, we've got to watch out for predators like mountain lions. So Chumley's job is no joke. Every morning I'd walk outside and find him and Richard in the same spot, curled up together like they'd never moved. Chumley refuses to come inside. He gets all stressed out if I try. He just wants to be out there with Richard, keeping watch. So every day we'd go for a walk. Me, Richard, and Chumley, with Chumley scanning the horizon, making sure we were all safe. Richard would prance along, curious as ever, sniffing every rock and bush. I'd call his name, and he'd come running, which is rare for a sheep. Most don't know their names, but Richard, he's different. He's got this spark, this intelligence that surprised me. Sometimes I'd worry about whether I was doing right by him. I'd never raised a lamb before, and I wasn't sure if I could give him everything he needed. Bottle feeding was one thing, but could I teach him how to be a sheep without a mom? The other sheep still didn't click with him, and I wondered if he'd ever feel like he belonged. But then I'd see him with Chumley, lying together in the sun, and I'd think, maybe this is enough. Maybe Chumley's the family he was meant to find. So I kept at it, making sure Richard had plenty of food, space to roam, and time with his best friend. One day, I realized just how deep their bond went. I was out checking the fences when I saw Richard wander a bit too far from the group. Chumley noticed before I did. He trotted over, nudging Richard back toward the herd, his eyes scanning for any sign of danger. It hit me then. Chumley wasn't just protecting Richard because it was his job. He loved that little lamb. And Richard, curious and bold as he was, trusted Chumley completely. But living in the mountains means constant vigilance. We'd had a few close calls with mountain lions before, and I couldn't shake the fear that one day Chumley might not be enough to keep Richard safe. So I doubled down on training Chumley, reinforcing his instincts, and made sure our fences were as secure as they could be. As the months went by, Richard grew stronger, his wool thicker, his steps surer. He was still the same curious, sweet guy, always ready to run to me when I called his name. But he and Chumley were a unit now, like two halves of the same whole. I'd watch them from my window, snuggled up in the field, and feel this warmth in my chest. They'd taught me something I hadn't expected. Animals can form bonds just as deep as humans, maybe deeper. Richard didn't need other sheep when he had Chumley, and Chumley, who protected everyone, only truly bonded with Richard. Sometimes I'd sit outside with them, just watching, and think about how love doesn't care about species or rules. Richard and Chumley proved that every day, but I still had moments of doubt. Was I doing enough to keep them safe? Could I protect them from everything out there? So I kept learning, talking to other farmers, researching sheep and guardian dogs, making sure I was giving them the best life I could. Now, every morning when I step outside and see them together, Richard trotting after Chumley, Chumley keeping watch, I know they've got something special. They've got each other. And in a world full of mountain lions and uncertainty, that's enough to keep me going. Thank you for watching. If you liked the story, feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. See you in the next video.